Zainab was expelled from her school. Not because she was pregnant, but because she refused to say who did it. What no one knew was that her silence was protecting a secret that could destroy the people everyone trusted the most. Let me tell you about Zainab, the brilliant girl from Queen Amina Girls College. That morning at Queen Amina Girls College started like every other school day. The bell rang early, students rushed out of their hostels, and teachers stood by the walkways watching girls adjust their uniforms. The air was calm, and nothing suggested that something shocking was about to happen. To everyone watching, it was just another normal day in a respected girls' school. Zainab walked slowly toward the assembly ground with her classmates. She was quiet as always, her eyes fixed on the ground. Zainab was known for her good behavior and sharp mind. She never missed classes, never talked back, and never gave teachers a reason to worry. But that morning, something was wrong. Her stomach felt tight, and a strange nausea kept rising in her chest. As the assembly began, students stood in neat lines. The principal's voice echoed through the microphone, talking about discipline and success. Suddenly, Zainab covered her mouth. Before anyone could ask if she was okay, she pushed through the line and ran forward. Gasps filled the air as she bent over and began to throw up in front of everyone. The assembly ground went silent. Some girls screamed. Others stepped back in shock. Teachers rushed toward her, shouting orders and trying to clear the area. Zainab was shaking, her eyes filled with tears and embarrassment. She could barely stand on her feet as two teachers helped her away from the crowd. She was taken straight to the sick bay. The matron asked her a few questions, but Zainab could hardly speak. After a brief examination, the matron's expression changed. Her calm face turned serious. She asked Zainab to lie down and sent everyone else out of the room. Moments later, the truth came out. Zainab was pregnant. The news did not stay in the sick bay for long. It moved quickly to the staff room and then to the principal's office. By lunchtime, whispers followed Zainab's name through the school corridors. Some girls looked at her with pity. Others looked at her with judgment. No one asked if she was okay. That same afternoon, Zainab stood alone in the principal's office. Several teachers sat across from her, their faces hard and disappointed. The principal leaned forward and spoke slowly. "Who is responsible for this shame?" Zainab's hands trembled. Her heart raced. She knew what the truth would cost her. She looked down and said nothing, and in that moment of silence, Zainab's life began to fall apart, while the real truth remained hidden in the shadows of Queen Amina Girls College. By the next morning, Zainab was no longer treated like a student. She was treated like a problem that needed to be removed quickly. The school that once praised her now spoke about her in low, harsh voices. Doors closed when she walked past. Eyes followed her everywhere. Even the walls of Queen Amina Girls College seemed to judge her. Zainab was called back to the principal's office before breakfast. This time, the room felt colder. The curtains were drawn, and the air was heavy. The principal sat behind her desk, with two senior teachers beside her. None of them asked Zainab to sit. She stood there, small and alone, holding her hands together to stop them from shaking. The principal spoke first. Her voice was calm, but there was no kindness in it. She said the school's reputation was at risk. Parents trusted Queen Amina Girls College with their daughters, and this situation could destroy that trust. Then she asked the question again, slowly and clearly, as if Zainab had not heard it before. "Who made you pregnant?" Zainab felt her throat tighten. Her mind filled with fear. She remembered the warnings. She remembered the looks. She remembered the quiet threats that were never spoken out loud. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She shook her head gently. "I can't say," she whispered. One of the teachers slammed her hand on the table. She accused Zainab of being stubborn and disrespectful. Another teacher said silence meant guilt. They told her that protecting someone else would only ruin her own life. But Zainab still said nothing. By midday, the decision had already been made. There would be no investigation, no counseling, no support. The school did not want the truth. They only wanted peace and silence. Zainab was given an expulsion letter and told to pack her things immediately. As she walked back to the hostel, girls stood at their windows watching her. Some whispered her name. Some laughed quietly. Others looked away in shame. Zainab packed her clothes slowly, each movement heavy with pain. This place had been her second home, and now it was pushing her out like she never belonged. That evening, Zainab stood at the school gates with her small bag. She turned back once to look at the buildings she loved. No teacher came to say goodbye. No one asked if she was okay. She walked out of Queen Amina Girls College carrying shame that was not hers, and a secret powerful enough to destroy the people who sent her away. Zainab did not sleep that night. She sat quietly on the hard bed at home, listening to the sounds of the neighborhood outside. Every noise made her heart jump. She kept thinking about the school gate closing behind her and the way no one looked back. By morning, her eyes were swollen from crying, but her tears had already dried when her father returned from work later that day. Her mother handed him the envelope from the school. It was thick and official, with bold writing on the front. Her father opened it slowly, reading every word in silence. As his eyes moved across the page, his face changed. His hands began to shake. "What is this shame?" he asked in a low, broken voice. Zainab's mother sat down heavily, covering her face. She had suspected something was wrong, but seeing it written made it real. The room filled with pain and silence. Zainab stood in the corner, unable to lift her head. She wanted to explain, but fear tied her tongue. Her father turned to her sharply. He asked her who was responsible. His voice was louder than the principal's had been, filled with anger and disappointment. Zainab opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She knelt on the floor instead, tears streaming down her face. "I will not bring shame to this house," her father said. "You have destroyed our name." Those words cut deeper than any punishment. Her mother cried quietly, torn between anger and love. No one asked Zainab how she felt. No one asked if she was forced. The questions were only about disgrace and family honor. That night, Zainab was told to stay inside. Neighbors had already begun to talk. Some came pretending to check on the family, but their eyes searched Zainab's stomach instead. Each look felt like a slap. As Zainab lay awake in the dark, she held her stomach gently. She whispered apologies to the life growing inside her. She knew the truth would change everything, but for now, silence was the only thing protecting her from something even worse than shame. Days passed, but nothing became easier for Zainab. Each morning felt heavier than the last. She stayed indoors, moving quietly around the house like someone afraid of being seen. Her school uniform remained folded in a corner of the room, untouched. Looking at it made her chest hurt, so she avoided it. Her father stopped speaking to her. When he came home from work, he ate his food in silence and left the room. Her mother spoke only when necessary. Sometimes, Zainab caught her staring with tired eyes, as if she wanted to ask questions but was too afraid of the answers. The house that once felt warm now felt cold and distant. Outside, the gossip grew louder. Neighbors whispered whenever Zainab passed by the window. Some shook their heads in disappointment. Others spoke in low voices, blaming her parents. Zainab felt trapped, like the whole world had judged her without hearing her story. One afternoon, a woman from the community came to visit. She spoke softly at first, pretending to offer comfort. Then she leaned closer and asked the question everyone wanted answered: "Who is the man?" Zainab's heart raced. Her hands trembled. She shook her head and said nothing. The woman sighed deeply and said young girls of today had no shame. After she left, Zainab locked herself in her room and cried until her chest hurt. That night, Zainab had a dream. She saw herself standing in front of Queen Amina Girls College again. The gate was wide open, but no one was inside. She called out, but only her echo replied. Then she saw a shadow of a man watching her from a distance. She tried to see his face, but he turned away. She woke up sweating, her heart pounding. The dream felt too real. It reminded her of why she was silent. The truth was dangerous. Speaking it could destroy lives, not just hers. Meanwhile, back at Queen Amina Girls College, life continued as if Zainab never existed. Her name was removed from records. Teachers avoided mentioning her. The school chose quiet over justice, but silence has a way of growing heavier with time. Zainab sat by her window that morning, staring at the road. She did not know it yet, but someone else was watching too. Someone who feared her silence more than her words. And slowly, without anyone noticing, the truth was beginning to move closer to the surface. But silence has a way of growing heavier with time. Weeks passed, and Zainab's body slowly began to change. Her stomach grew little by little, and her mother started sewing loose dresses for her. Zainab stayed indoors most of the time, sitting quietly in her room or helping with small chores. She avoided mirrors and avoided people. Every day felt longer than the last. One afternoon, Zainab's younger cousin came to visit. She was cheerful and full of stories from school. She talked about lessons, friends, and teachers, trying to make Zainab smile. Zainab listened quietly, nodding now and then, until her cousin mentioned a name that made her heart stop: Mr. Karim is now taking extra classes," her cousin said happily. "Everyone likes him. Parents say he's a good man. He always tells us to behave well and speak up if something is wrong." Zainab felt her chest tighten. Her hands began to shake slightly. She looked away quickly so her cousin would not notice the fear in her eyes. Mr. Karim. The name brought back memories she had tried hard to bury. His calm voice, his gentle smile, the closed door, the warning not to tell anyone. Her cousin continued talking, unaware of the storm inside Zainab. She said Mr. Karim was respected by the school and trusted by parents. Some even called him a role model for young girls. Zainab could barely breathe. The same man who ruined her life was being praised openly. That evening, Zainab overheard her parents talking in low voices. The school had invited her father to attend a parents' meeting. They wanted to discuss morals, discipline, and the future of young girls. A special guest would speak to the parents. The guest was Mr. Karim. Zainab felt sick. Her knees became weak, and she sat down slowly. The school that expelled her was now celebrating the man who caused her pain. No one knew the truth. No one suspected anything. And the school was helping him look clean. That night, Zainab lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Her silence suddenly felt very heavy. She realized that by keeping quiet, she was not just protecting herself. She was protecting someone who did not deserve it. For the first time, Zainab wondered how many other girls were suffering in silence. And deep inside her heart, a dangerous thought began to grow. What if she was not the only one? The next morning, Zainab woke up feeling uneasy. Her mind kept going back to the name she had heard the day before. She could not stop thinking about how that man was still respected and trusted. It made her feel sick and restless. Later that day, her cousin came to visit again. This time, she was very quiet. She sat close to Zainab and kept looking toward the door. Zainab noticed that something was wrong. The girl was not smiling, and her hands were shaking. After sitting in silence for a while, the girl asked Zainab why she was sent away from school. Zainab took a deep breath and said the school asked her to leave. She did not explain further. The girl became more nervous. She lowered her voice and asked a question that made Zainab's heart beat faster. "Did a teacher ever touch you or make you feel uncomfortable?" Zainab looked at her carefully. She saw fear in the girl's eyes. Slowly, she nodded her head. The girl began to cry. She said the same teacher had been calling her after class. He told her not to tell anyone. He said she would get into trouble if she spoke. She said she was scared every day at school. Zainab listened quietly. She felt pain, but she did not interrupt. She realized she was not the only one who had suffered. Her silence had not stopped anything. It had allowed the same thing to happen again. Zainab held her cousin's hand and told her she was not alone. They both cried together for a long time. That evening, Zainab thought deeply about everything she had heard. She was still afraid, but she knew something important now. Keeping quiet was not helping anyone anymore. Zainab could not stop thinking about what her cousin had told her. The fear in the girl's eyes stayed with her all day. She knew that if she said nothing, more girls could be hurt. But speaking out felt impossible. No one had listened to her before, and she knew the adults around her cared more about the school's reputation than the students. She spent the day in her room, sitting quietly and thinking. She went over everything she remembered about Mr. Karim. The closed doors, the warnings, the way he pretended to care. She realized she had to be careful. One wrong move, and he could destroy her life further. That evening, Zainab decided she needed a plan. She wrote everything down in a small notebook she kept hidden. She wrote the dates, what had happened to her, and what she knew about him. She also wrote down what her cousin had shared. The notebook was small, but it felt like a shield. Zainab knew she could not show it to anyone yet. Her parents were still upset and did not understand. The school would ignore her, but she promised herself she would keep it safe. She would wait for the right moment. She would not speak without proof. The next few days were the hardest. Zainab had to act normal around her family while keeping her secret. She helped her mother at home, stayed quiet when neighbors came, and avoided talking about school. Every time her father mentioned the school, her heart ached, but she stayed silent. One afternoon, her cousin came again. This time she brought a message. Another girl from the school wanted to talk to Zainab. She said she had something important to tell her, but only in private. Zainab agreed. She realized she was no longer alone. Other girls were beginning to trust her. That night, Zainab held her notebook close. She whispered to herself that she would protect the truth. She did not know how long it would take, but she promised that one day, the world would know what really happened at Queen Amina Girls' College. A few days later, Zainab prepared to meet the other girl from the school. They agreed to meet in a quiet room at Zainab's house, where no one could overhear. Zainab's heart pounded as she waited. She felt nervous but also relieved. Finally, she would not be alone with the secret. When the girl arrived, she looked scared and unsure. Her hands were shaking, and she avoided eye contact. Zainab greeted her gently and asked her to sit. The girl whispered her story. She explained how the same teacher had been calling her after class, telling her to keep quiet and threatening her if she told anyone. The fear in her voice made Zainab's stomach twist. Zainab listened carefully. She took notes in her small notebook, adding details the girl remembered. Together, they compared what had happened to both of them. Zainab realized that the teacher's actions were not a one-time mistake. He had been taking advantage of girls for a long time. After the girl finished speaking, Zainab spoke softly but firmly. "We have to do something," she said. "We cannot let him keep hurting anyone." The girl nodded, tears running down her cheeks. "But what can we do?" she asked. "No one will listen." Zainab thought for a long time. She could not trust the school. Her parents were too focused on shame to help, but she had a notebook full of evidence, and she had another girl who was willing to speak. Slowly, an idea formed. They would gather proof quietly, document everything, and make sure no one could ignore it. They made a plan to meet secretly over the next few weeks. Each time they would write down what had happened, who was involved, and when it happened. Zainab also promised to protect the girl and anyone else who wanted to join later. It was risky, but staying silent was no longer an option. That night, Zainab lay awake thinking about the plan. Fear still existed, but a small spark of hope had formed. For the first time in months, she felt like she had some control. She knew the path ahead would be dangerous, but the truth needed to be heard, and she was ready to fight for it. The next day, Zainab knew she could not wait any longer. She had the notebook full of proof, and the other girls had agreed to help. They decided to confront one of the teachers who had quietly noticed strange behavior before but never acted. If anyone could listen, it would be this teacher. Zainab and the other girls went to the school quietly, hiding the notebook in a small bag. Their hearts raced as they walked past the assembly ground. Every glance from the older teachers made them tense. They reached the teacher's office and knocked softly. After a long moment, the door opened. The teacher looked surprised but listened carefully as Zainab explained everything. She showed the notebook, pointing out dates, threats, and the names of students who had been targeted. The teacher's face changed. He seemed shocked and angry, and for the first time, Zainab felt that someone believed her, but just as they were speaking, a shadow appeared in the hallway. Mr. Karim had returned early. The girls froze. He glanced inside the office, and his eyes landed on the notebook. Anger flashed across his face. Zainab's hands trembled, but she held the notebook tighter. The teacher stepped forward, blocking him. "We know what you've been doing," he said firmly. "It ends now." Mr. Karim's calm smile disappeared. He realized the secret could no longer be hidden. The tension in the room was almost unbearable. Zainab looked at the other girls and nodded. She understood now that the silence had ended. The truth was out in a small, careful confrontation, but it was enough to shake him. The next step would be bigger, and the school could no longer protect him. That night, Zainab returned home exhausted but determined. She finally felt the first taste of justice. The danger was not over, but the power had shifted slightly. And tomorrow, everything could change. The next morning, Zainab returned to school with the notebook safely hidden in her bag. She was nervous, but she felt stronger than she had in months. Today, she would no longer stay silent. She had proof, witnesses, and a plan. She went straight to the principal's office, accompanied by the teacher who had finally believed them and a few brave students. Zainab handed over the notebook and explained everything clearly. She told them about Mr. Karim, the threats, the secret meetings, and the girls who had been hurt. She spoke calmly, with determination in her voice. The principal read the notebook, her eyes widening with shock. She realized that the school had covered up a serious crime. The other staff members who had ignored the situation were called in immediately. When the principal found out, Mr. Karim was summoned. He could no longer hide behind his respectability. He was removed from his position and paraded in front of the entire school, disgraced and shamed, before being reported to the authorities. As the investigation unfolded, more girls came forward. Each testimony added to the weight of the evidence. Mr. Karim could no longer manipulate or threaten anyone. The school was forced to act. For the first time, Zainab felt a sense of relief and justice. Zainab returned home that evening. Her parents were waiting, anxious and unsure. She explained everything simply, showing them the notebook. Her father's anger was mixed with regret, and her mother's tears were now filled with relief. They finally understood that her silence had been a form of courage, not disobedience. From that day on, Zainab felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She realized that secrets and fear had kept the wrong people in power for too long. Her silence had protected the guilty, but her voice had freed the innocent. Silence may seem safe, but courage and truth have the power to protect not only yourself but everyone around you. Speaking out can be frightening, but it is the only way to stop harm and bring justice. Zainab looked out of the window that night and smiled quietly. The darkness that had haunted her was gone. She had faced her fear, protected others, and finally changed the story forever.